So, welcome to Chat on the Sofa. We've got Tim today, very exciting, and Tim's going to tell us about Alpha and an update on Uganda and our connection with Uganda. So, Tim, just tell us, why was Alpha started up? Because I know as a church we haven't done it for a while.
Yeah. Well, I suppose as the first lockdown was starting, I was reading that passage. I think it's in Luke, but it's only where Jesus he's talking to his disciples, and they've returned from a fruitless night of fishing, and so what he says to them, well, go out again. All right, go out again. And they come back with incredibly laden nets, so much so that they have to send help out to a second boat, I think, to bring in all the catch. And that really hit home to me. I felt God convicted me about we're called to be fishers of men. And then I sort of looked at the back end of Matthew, where it's the so-called Great Commission about making disciples. And I just think we needed a tool at that time, because I felt that as the pandemic was so serious that it was causing people to be challenged in their sort of securities. So it was an opportunity to present the gospel to people as they were sort of rethinking things, and established securities were being shaken, I suppose. And so the tool that we turned to was Alpha, and it was used, as you say, earlier in the church, and it's just a great tool. And as we went about, we did I put a team together, and we did the training for it. I'd like to give some credit here to Ian. Ian Spademan has worked with Alpha for some time, and he's been on sort of training courses with them up in London and things like that. And he was a great help. He knew a lot about the sessions and things like that. But yeah, we offered it up to the church, and folks wanted to come on and be guests.
Brilliant. And we're very grateful that you've done that as well. So tell us how it went. What it was like online as well.
Well, the interesting thing is that because we did it online, we were able to bring in people more easily. So, for example, my former head of department, a lady called Vanessa from Southend High School for Boys, formerly at that school, we were able to connect with her because she was in Suffolk. And there was another lady called Tosin, who you'll probably meet over the next few months. She was able to come online easily, and it was just the way to go. And we found it easy to make connections. There was at that time a whole sort of whole raft of online alphas starting. I mean, I can't remember the figures, but they ran into thousands. And just watching some of the HTB videos, that's Holy Trinity Brompton videos, where the course is sort of where it was birthed through Nicky Gumbel, was really inspiring to see that so many were signing up. And then later on in the pandemic, there were a lot of testimonies coming through on the HTB website about people who'd found God on through the Alpha courses. So and it worked really well. We used the video materials, which are excellent, really excellent. Extremely professionally put together. We used a couple of sort of face-to-face teaching sessions, myself and Mike Cairns, just to sort of intersperse it up a bit. But materials are great. People were able to ask questions. It's supposed to be one of those environments where doesn't matter what you ask, any struggles, any problems, any things you find difficult with the Christian message, all of those can be resolved through discussion and just sort of expressing your views and things like that. We didn't have many sort of people who said, well, I can't understand this, or I can't understand that, and this really gets my goat, because most of the people were on their way to finding God or deepening their relationship with God. So because I know some alphas are sort of characterized by that. It's often those people who become fantastically, fantastically going for God Christians, but no, we've run 2 courses now, and we want to make it a rolling program, but there has to be, those potential guests there. So I suppose you're getting me onto the subject of what do we pray for, but yeah. Go on, you asked the question.
No, yeah, that's fine. You led in. So are there some areas that we can pray for going forward, and maybe for those that have taken part as well?
Yes, thank you. I think if I just sort of share something about my personal testimony, that it needed for me to have that deeper conviction that what I've got, in other words, the gospel, is actually appropriate and desirable for everybody. And I think when it's easy as a Christian, of a number of years, to think, well, what I've got is fantastic and it's blessing him, who I see at church, and her I see at church, but I can't quite conceive how it's going to bring life, bring new life to my neighbour or my mate down the road. And I think that just being convicted that it's the power of God unto salvation. It's the way to life. Jesus said, it's the way, the truth. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And for me, just having that deeper conviction about that was important. And I think that's something I'd want to share with folks. So sort of praying to that's sort of that's a faith, a step of faith that we could have across the church. Yeah. And that's not sort of bigging myself up or those of us who are doing Alpha, but just thinking, what we've got to give away is incredible. And yeah, for the guests, I mean, all the guests that we've had, bar those that are living away, can actually join the church and want to join the church. So that's good.
Fantastic. And we'll move on to Uganda. So right. Tell us about your connection with Uganda.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, I've got to credit Pete Burgess here, because 5 years ago he said to Pam and I really, 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 really want you to go to Uganda, because that was a few months off retirement for me. So off we flew with him and Brenda, and it was just one of those times where, sort of godly relation, sort of, how can I put it? They used to say divine encounters, didn't they? Yeah. But sort of a few divine encounters with people, and you think this is a relationship that God wants to develop. And so we met a young guy there called Leonard, and have been able to support him to become a clinical practitioner, because he's just a really gifted young medic, and he's I think the plans for him to go on to be a GP. But we met a number of other brothers and sisters in the church there, and we've continued a lot of those relationships as others have done in SCF, we've kept in touch. We've taken out football gear, because one of the young guys in the church, a guy called Marvin, a very gifted footballer himself, has started up a street kids work ministry, and there are lots and lots of street kids in Masaka, where we go to, and he's just drawn these guys together using the context of football. But it's been life-changing for these guys. They've found a home, they've found accommodation at a school, and where they're looked after, a lot of them. They've been successful as a football team. I've watched them play. They're really, really good. A lot of potential there. And we took some football gear out for them, and they were really blessed. What else have we done? Well, more recently, in the start of the pandemic, when it was May time, a guy called David Mwanya, who was someone I met through School of Ministries, which is why we went out there to teach on School of Ministries. I formed a good friendship with him. He always came over to me and greeted me warmly and everything. So we've established this relationship. But he sent me some video from where he pastors. So that's on the islands of Lake Victoria, and they were flooding. So the lake rose, and where these guys were living on one of the islands, it sort of washed away their houses, literally flooding in. And so shared it with our home group, and over the last, I suppose it's sort of 12 months really, we've been raising money. I was trying to think of the total, but it must be more than 800 now, and towards 1,000.
Brilliant.
Towards feeding them initially. So David is just an exceptional guy. So only last week he was sending me detailed documentation of how every literally Ugandan shilling was spent. I mean, he's just so, I honour that guy so much. He's been so accountable with the money that we've sent. And a second house is now being completed. He showed us the pictures of the first one in the autumn, I think it was. But now we've seen that a second house is built, and they're just really, really grateful for that. It's great what you can do. £800 buys 2 houses. Now, would you get that in the UK?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well done to your home group, and
well, yeah,
that's brilliant. Really
yeah.
good. So maybe you can give us a bit of an update on what it's like. I don't know if you know what's going on in Uganda COVID wise and how
yes, that's right. Yeah, first of all, the thing that struck myself and Pamela was the president, President Museveni. He's been there for decades. He's called 2 national days of prayer and fasting, and they I think they've been instrumental. God's really heard and listened, to what people have been crying out to him, and their infection rates have been remarkably low. I can't give you actually figures, and their death rates have been remarkably low. They have been in different forms of lockdown as well, but yeah, they just seem to have been preserved, as a country. Now I know figures can be a bit deceptive, when they're not gathered, but from what we hear on the ground, infection rates and death rates have been remarkably low. So we want to give thanks to God for that. And yeah. So.
Wow, that's really amazing testimony, isn't it, for their country? And
yes,
2 days of national prayer and fasting.
That's right. Yeah.
So I wonder if there are some other areas that we can pray into as well, some prayer points.
That's right. Well, they're catching the whole sort of principle of revival. I've been listening to some of the things that they've been sending through. They've in Masaka's, the church we go to, the Full Gospel Church there, they've introduced 2 services, I think, because more people are coming. That's just really seeing that church grow. There's a whole band of really gifted, anointed young guys there, in terms of Bible teaching, leading meetings. Some of you have heard of people like Joe. Some will have heard of Matthias. And Godfrey and his wife. I mean, there's a lot of gifted people. It's just knowing how to take the church in Masaka on, into a new phase. And yes, God's blessing on the people there. I think we've got a lot to learn. I mean, if anyone's watched any of the videos that people have brought back, there's so many lessons to learn into particularly how they pray, how they really call on God. They don't wait for things to happen. They just call on him as if it was their dying moment, and with that intensity and that urgency, and then God meets them. Yeah.
Amazing. Lots to give thanks for, and things to pray into for SDF folk and anyone else who's watching as well. So thank you so much, Tim, for giving us an update on those areas, and
it's a pleasure.
Great to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. Yeah. Okay. Bless you guys if you're listening or watching. Bye-bye.